Ooh, oops. Hey, loves. I'm gonna do a live with somebody for holding change. Ooh, y'all, my turtle just tried to escape into the wild on a 100-degree day. My turtle was running around. They knocked over part of the wall of their house and were walking around because it's too hot. I think that's what they're trying to tell me. Mom, it's too hot here. Special. I'm sweating, but I'm here and I'm looking for, hi y'all. Turtle. I'm like, why are you doing this? Don't do this to me. Don't do this right now. It's an African sulcata tortoise. So I thought it was okay outside because I was like, Hey, Micky. Oh my God. So I'm sorry I'm a little late for our live time. My tortoise just knocked over the side of their house and ran around. I was like running around outside.
Oh
I found them
no.
under a car, under this car. And then I don't know how they got themselves under there, but they couldn't get back out. We had 3 Black women had to lift the car while the turtle made a run for it. And I'm kind of amazed because they were like, I'm not staying out here in this heat, first and foremost, Mom.
Okay.
I'm not doing it. Also, I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. Run away. Like, knock over your strong. They're so strong. So,
Hi. I
hi.
like it's I'm glad to hear this story of turtle agency. Like I feel like we can all learn from that.
It's they're fast too. So like everything I was ever told about turtles is wrong. They're fast, they have huge personalities, they're strong, so strong.
Wow.
Anyway, but I'm recentering myself and I'm really proud of myself. My friend Michaela Harrison is in town, the whale singer. So she was like down on my yoga mat on the ground, like talking to Nalito and just being, come on, baby. Like, you don't need to stay under that car. And she also helped see
Yeah.
their side, which was there's no way out. They can't get out of here. So first and foremost, how are you
Yeah.
today? Because that's how
Wow.
I am.
I'm okay. I've been doing a lot of self-care today, just really trying to be like do a lot of things to resource myself, you know. Um I try to do that in advance now, you know, instead of just like waiting to hit me.
That's great.
So,
Yeah. So I'm really grateful that you are down to have this conversation with me and that you're down to have it publicly. You know, we've talked privately some. And so for folks who are just joining us and you're like, what is this? You know, something change came out. Um, I did interviews. I did this whole interview series and all the different contributors came on. And Micky, I didn't have come on at that time because there was a controversy unfolding with the piece
yeah.
that you had submitted to us. Uh, and I want to, now that we've talked, we've been in a
Yeah.
process. So it's almost been a year. You know, you let me know that things were unfolding and that there was an issue going on. And then we've been in communication mostly through email during that time about like, okay, what do we do? What are you doing? Like, what's happening? And now we've reached a place in that process where it feels like at least
Yeah.
enough has moved to be able to talk about it. Um, and I wanted us to do a live because I feel like it's so important to model for people. Like, so we're all talking about accountability, this and that, but like, what does it actually look like when you make a mistake, when you have to step into an accountability process, and what does it look like as you're coming through it? What does it look like to start to come through to the other side of it when it's not like a neat, clean bow tie situation? So I think I have questions, the same questions that I asked a lot of the other people, which I will ask you. But I think first it would be helpful if you just gave a context of like, here's what happened, y'all. You know, just how you want what you want to share about it, and then I'll ask you a little bit about you know, process, learning, conflict?
Well, it's
Yeah.
weird. All of this is very weird. Like,
Yeah.
feels tender and fragile and uh all sticky, like so many adjectives. Part of the thing that's weird is like my in the past I've been known in very particular circles, right? So like, and generally that's like faithy, justicey kind of circles, and then it kind of morphed more into like general movement circles, right? So like when all of this unfolded, when I was essentially publicly accused of plagiarism, and I'll get to every like let me tell the story, but like not everybody saw it. Like very actually, I think a kind of small percentage of the internet saw it because
Yeah.
for a number
Yeah.
of reasons. One, it like first unfolded on Facebook, and like generationally, who's on Facebook, who and then also I like answered it and was very and publicly apologized very very quickly. And some would say, like, I've
Yeah.
had people on all ends of the spectrum, like, you took way too much responsibility, you over apologized, no, you didn't say this exact thing, so that wasn't enough, right? Everybody has their opinions about it. And so,
Yep.
but even at the very beginning, I was like trying to talk to like my colleagues privately, talk to Beth, the person that claimed ownership of about about 2/3 of the words in the poem, Invitation to Brave Space. And so like I was trying to go through certain channels, which means you can't answer somebody on the internet immediately, right? And also
Right.
trying to
Right.
process, like trying to go through my own, like, oh, is that what happened? And oh, what do I need to come clean about, and what do I need to address? And like trying to do all that work so it was coming from a genuine place, right? Because I do have this kind of, while I also over apologize or tend towards over accountability, I also tend to like uh want to only be like apologize for what I know I've done, right? So I hold both of those things inside of my. So like when all that's happening in real
Yeah.
time, it's a like it's just a lot to navigate, and there's no like like we don't know the right ways to do that, right?
Well, so let's slow it down, right? Because I feel like because you're
Yeah.
living in it, you're right in the middle. So rewind a little bit to there, because it's actually a really, I mean, like we're recognizing this when we were talking. It's really a story between us too, that years ago I found this image of this poem that
Yeah.
appeared to be kind of written on a door or something. And it was talking about, that we can't create necessarily safe spaces for each other, that we've got to create something that allows us to take risks. And I posted that. You asked where it was from. Like, you had reached out. You were like, where do you know where this is from? And I was like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is who posted it to me. I know. And at that point, we didn't know more than that.
So what's
And
also
what
interesting
happened
is
from there?
I commented twice. I commented saying, this is what I mean by brave space. Like I was jazzed. I was like, it lit me up. And I also tagged like
Yep.
colleagues, like, so for me, there was never this element of like, ooh, I'm going to secretly take this and use it. And then I was in contact with you with like, oh, I have adapted it to my understanding of brave space. I, gave it this title. I really want to use it in this work and da 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 da. And like, was super excited and kind of, I searched, like I went to tried to find the person that you said posted it, and then they, and like,
Yep.
and so I originally put
Yeah.
something like, I can't remember, but I put like inspired by an unknown author's poem, because I had done some, like,
Yeah.
again, I added about a third more words and changed things around and added, that it was about brave space and all of this stuff. And so, you know, still understandably plagiarism, like adding a third to 2/3 more is not great. And
Yeah.
I am usually a meticulous person when it comes to quoting someone, giving people credit. And so I don't know what made me think I could do that or whatever, like I don't feel like I've gotten to some point of like, well, I just wanted to be loved by everyone or some, some deep psychological reason. It's like it was just legit a bad call. And it was a bad call that was made in community. Like, I talked to people about it. And so that's why also I didn't like bad thing, you know?
Because it was like
Yeah.
a conversation with people you were developing. And also I think people were responding to it like there's something in the original piece and something in what you added that is so necessary for this time that people are responding to it like, holy shit, I want this. But in that process, yeah, because I think that moment of like, when did that in collaboration with an unknown writer fall away, right? And um, I want to name this that I often find this happens even like in emergent strategy. There's so many people actually quoted in that book. And I will see something get posted that's like by Adrienne Marie Brown. And I try to grab it and be like, no, that was Dara Cooper. No, that was this other person. And, I try to grab it every time, but I can't grab it every time. Or even like, there's stuff that's more nuanced, like Move at the Speed of Trust. I'm like, that is from Mervyn Marcano. And it also seems to have shown up from these other people. And people are, the internet is a lazy space when it comes to crediting. But then really like it's hardcore when it's like, wait, that I want that credit. Like it's both and happen. So I want to name all of that. Because even this morning, sort of separate from this, but like as a meme person, I was like, y'all, I be posting these memes. I don't know where they all come from. And everybody's always like, where did this come from? Credit this person, whatever. And I'm like, it's the internet. I don't know where it's all coming from. And I feel like this was an early version of that in some ways. Like this was kind of a meme initially. But so then this thing is spreading out. It's going viral. A lot of people are reposting it, listening to it. So I reached out to you and I asked if we could include it in holding change, because it feels like such a fundamental way to understand what holding change is. And if you could give it some more context, right? So, for me, this was the part where we had to get clean, because I'm like, you submitted it to me, you signed a contract, that this was your work. It was, for us, that was the place where I was like, Micky, right? And then was it after that that you heard that there was that Beth reached out to you? But Beth, who neither of us know.
So Beth reached out to me. I mean, there are a lot of details, but it doesn't really matter. Eventually, Beth and I were in contact, and I didn't actually ask her to prove it. Apparently, the wall that it was on is in a building that no longer exists, and so I didn't ask for any proof. There, to my knowledge, isn't a digital version. Like there isn't proof per se. And what's also interesting is like, as it rolled along, like you had no memory, other people had no memory of you ever posting it as a meme. So it was like, it just like, it just was such a non-thing, like, because sometimes people do adapt work and add to it and change and whatever. Like it happens sometimes with permission. And so I think it just never occurred, wouldn't have had permission.
What so angry to see that this thing is in the world and I created this, right? Basically. And then did y'all ever have an accountability conversation or an accountability process? Like what?
We had a conversation initially. I was actually I was supposed to have surgery the last week of June. And all of this had happened. And it was, people that loved us were like going back and forth on our social media. Like, Micky, no, this is Beth. She needs to do it. People were angry, which I 100% understand. And I didn't feel like it was my place to like tell people how they needed to feel. So people were duking it out. And Beth initiated a conversation. And of course I was like, yes, I would be happy to talk to you. Like, if you're open, please. And so we had a Zoom call, spoke face to face over video. And I actually put all of this on my social media and it's stayed on there. I haven't taken anything off. And, we had about an hour-long conversation. And, she seemed at the time very kind. she was like, I wanted to have this conversation before you went into surgery, so this wouldn't be hanging over your head. Like, you know, I do justice work too. Like, this obviously has touched a lot of people. I've done beautiful work. You do beautiful
Yeah.
work. I want us to have conversations and work this out. And the agreement was I would source some transformative justice folks, some facilitators, and I would pay for the whole thing, and we would have, you know, a process and work through it. And then I never heard from her again. So I don't, you know, I
Yeah.
don't know what happened. You know, I did, she requested several things that I go online and tell people about the conversation and things like that. So I did. And
Yeah.
I'd never heard from her again. I contacted the facilitators, had several meetings with them, paid them. You know, so I had an accountability pod just for me. Like, she didn't ask for that, but that was something that was really for me. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, and then the team that I was working with professionally at the time wanted to go through a process, and so I went through a
Yeah.
process with them. Unfortunately, it did not go very well, and we weren't able to complete a process. Um, and you know, so I don't know how she feels or anything. Like, we, I don't know what to do about that thing,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's part of why I wanted you to, that's part of what I want to talk about. You know, that's part of why I was like, okay, when I saw that you were posting about it, you know, that you were kind of, because you posted about
yeah,
that and then you kind of disappeared, right? I feel like in accountability online moments, that's often the thing that happens is there's this initial flurry, which when you're in it, it's like, this is the whole world. Everyone in the entire world can see this, is watching this, whatever it is. But there's this initial flurry and then there's a disappearance. And sometimes people come back and we see, and, you know, come back and they're like, that never happened. Let's just move on. Sometimes people come back and it's like, here's everything I've done and here's the steps I'm taking moving forward. And I, you know, which I feel like that's kind of, you came back and you're like, here's where I'm at now. Um, and willing to talk about it some, which I feel like, I think it's going to be very important to have that be a part of these cycles, these part of these practices for stuff like this, where it's like, there's a harm that was done. There's the intentions behind all of it. And then there's a lot of mystery, right? I think in our dream world for how accountability works, it's like all the intentions are really good and the harm was really harmless. And like everyone got to sit down and it was great. And then we all feel
yeah,
at peace and here's the clear outcome. And as someone who mediates this stuff often and still and mostly behind the scenes, that's almost never what actually happens. What much more often happens is things like this, where threads get dropped, things like where it's like strangers who are like, oh, at first I thought it was cool, but actually I'm fucking pissed and I need to go be, or, you know, we don't know. It's like anything could happen, right? But I think being able to show, like, even without the closure, like a clear process of like, here's the full closure, you have to move on as a human. You have to, there's still work for you to do. And the peace is still in the world. So like what I've been experiencing is it's one of the most
mm-hmm.
popular pieces in holding change, right? It really deeply resonates with people. And I've been like, what do we do as, you know, what do I do as the person who published this book? And you know, how does AK hold this? It's like, well, this thing is out there, you know, and um, and it's really of value to people. Like the book, you know, there's not a way to just be like, okay, everybody,
Right.
especially since we don't have an answer from her, where it's like, here's what we can do to make things fair or right. So, you know, what we've landed on is that if we reach a place where we need another printing, then we'll include in there what the information is, what we know, a paragraph about it, to just give people that context so that they understand, you know, what we think of this piece is and of the work is. Um, so I want to ask you now, June 2022, what is your relationship to this piece? What is your relationship to the essay that you wrote? Is that still feeling like a part of the work that you're called to move and called to do? Like, where's it landed for
Well,
you?
I
Or
have 2 copies of the book, and 100% honestly, I've barely opened it. Uh, because it's
yeah,
really painful. Like, um, it's one of those
yeah,
things like now having, I mean, I was already into it before. Like, I was already looking at a lot of stuff around conflict and TJ and RJ and like, how do we do this stuff? Um, I
yeah,
think when you first wrote the essay that became We Will Not Cancel Us, I like texted you and I was like, Adrian, this it like it,
yes,
and so, but then when you are the person who is the harm doer or is in the center of the conflict, doesn't none of that stuff matters. Like,
yeah,
you can't come to the table with like, here's all of the things I know about conflict transformation and you should listen to me, because people don't want to hear it. And it's like everybody's too tender, and you're also a mess. Like, I was a mess. Um I have
yeah,
such a deep, like, I'm an Enneagram teacher and I'm a type 1, and like I good. My
mm,
deepest desire in the world is to be good and to be right and to not fuck things up. And I fucked up, and that sucks. And like, hurting people you love and that you've built work with really sucks. And it's like that spiral, like, is tough. And so, my body flipped out. It was really hard to be present for months. And, so like, there was a time when I wasn't even sure if I would ever use my own name again. Like, I was like, I'll just go by MJ for the rest of eternity. Micky ScottBey Jones can die. Like, didn't know if I could handle it.
wow.
Which is all my stuff and nobody else's stuff to clean up, but it's like, that was part of the reality. And so just actually rewrite.
Well, that you, I just want to just interject there. I think it's actually really important to name that reality because I think that folks, this good bad paradigm, right? So you're like, I'm trying to be good. I want to be good, which I think most tons and tons and tons of people
Yeah.
are like, I want to be good, right? First, I want to be seen as good. And we know, I think those of us who do mediation and this work are like, there's the good
Yeah.
bad paradigm is actually part of the problem. Like, it's good people and bad people. And part of what plays out online is that you're a good person until you're a bad person. Until you make a mistake that people know about, and then you're bad. And I think that we don't, part of what led to writing We Will Not Cancel Us, part of it is like, how do we, um, how do we honor, like, okay, stuff happens, but
Yeah.
then there's still humans doing it. Humans who have to learn from whatever these mistakes are. And only some humans get caught. Like the thing that you did, like I know tons and tons of people have done work like that. But you got caught in it, and then you're like, I'm taking accountability, but it's not a clean process. And
Yeah.
but people also step away, right? I find it to, a lot of the people that I've supported who've gone through this experience get so isolated in that moment that it's like, I've done something that I feel ashamed about. I've done something that other people are making me feel ashamed about also. And there's no one who's necessarily staying close in to help intervene on just the shame. Because the shame is like, addict world, it's like the shame is
Yeah.
actually keeping us from the deeper work, right? The shame, like, if you go under this, it'll be like despair. I don't deserve to exist. Everything, so we stay, it's like, oh, like I'm going to hit this shame, but I won't necessarily get under into the deeper work I need to heal. And there's someone to guide that. And I keep wishing, and I've talked about this before, that there was like circles that were like, we're going to hold space for those who have caused harm to be able to look at the shame, feel what's underneath it that might have contributed to making the
Yeah.
choices, right? Making the bad calls. Uh, and because there is something under there that's like,
Yeah.
it feels good. It's like, I've contributed something really necessary to the world. Like, I've contributed something that people really need. And like, okay, I fudged it, like there's some parts of, so there's something in there that's like being nourished by it. And if we don't get down underneath the shame to like, here's what's being nourished, then that part,
Yeah.
it takes so much longer to heal. It takes so much to heal. And I want to name that because I know that that's part of what happened. And part of how I was interacting with you during that time was like, I do want to hold you accountable. You put my work at risk. All of that is true. And I know you to be a human being. I know you to be someone who's always trying to contribute to your community. I know that you will learn from this. I want to stay in touch with you through that process. And I was really
Yeah.
grateful to hear that you had a pod. Speak a little bit about the pulling together the pod. Like, how did you know that was the move you wanted to make? How did you identify who was going to be in the pod that you could trust?
Yeah.
And how did that process go?
Well, can I say one more thing about the what tip is to the piece now?
Yeah.
Like I reread the essay. I read all of it, but like the essay, 100% purely me. Like I can 100% say that. And I read it and I was like, damn, that's
Uh-huh.
good. Like I was really proud of myself. And it was the things that I deeply believe in. And I think maybe why part of the reason, there are so many reasons why I'm like, yeah, I'm not just going to disappear. Like, I just, like, yes, I want to find a way to be accountable and live accountability. And I think
Yeah.
disappearing is not it. Like, that we can't just keep disappearing people. And I can't participate in that by letting myself disappear. Like, yeah, I could go become a data analyst and like never engage any of these circles again. And that's an option. And it might end up being my option. Like I may not be able to build sustainable work in, these areas again, but I can try and I can just see if there's another way. And so, yeah, I still really believe that if we can figure out how to show up and do our own work, that we're going to actually be able to make more progress together. And like, that's how we're going to create the world we want. But we have to kind of be doing our own work together. I still am totally in it.
Yeah. That's the big part. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
the practice right now. It's like you you did something and then you're taking
Yes.
the risk of being
But
like, I did that.
I wouldn't have gotten back here
I did that.
without my pod, my like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't find the work of Kai Cheng Tom until later, but Kai Cheng Tom's work, her work around understanding the window of what she calls transformation instead of the window of tolerance, like, and like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I was getting, so far out of it that it was like really hard for me to be a full participant and for people to know that I was really sincere, because I was like just struggling to survive every circle, because I was just thrown off. My survival brain was just in alarm. And
Yeah.
so like her work, and I did go directly to as many people on TJ stuff like that I
Yeah.
and I like looked into like I don't know how you Google search like what happens after plagiarism, or who plagiarized and what did they do? How did they make it right? Like I tried all the Google searches and learned like no
Yep.
one ever admits to plagiarism. Never ever. And we have people that we know and love. Like everyone knows MLK plagiarized throughout his academic career. Everyone knows Neil Hurston plagiarized. Like, and for the most part, you ignore it. You ignore it. Like, she died
Mm.
penniless, and maybe as part of that, there were lots of other things. But like, so some people we punish, and they can never write again, and some people we just, it's fine. There's enough other goodness in them. And so but I was trying to figure out, I was trying to learn from our ancestors, right? Like, and like my pod, it was a mix of people who knew me really well, like friends, but particular friends who like know all my shit. Like, and then it was
Yeah.
also a friend who's
Yeah.
been in TJ for 20 years, a friend who's a peacemaker, like literally was involved in the struggles in Ireland. Um, you know, another friend that does like DEI kind of work. Like they all did a minister, like
Yep.
people who did different things, but and who knew me at different levels. And some of them knew each other, but some of them didn't. And it was about 7 folks.
And was it you that was like, these are the people and here's the invitation, or was
No,
someone already like
totally on
helping
my
you at
own.
that
I
point?
followed Mia Mingus's piece on accountability pods, and I like literally printed out the diagram and made my circles of people and like went through several versions of those. And I did really want people who were going to call me on my
Yeah.
shit and who also were interested in my survival. And so
Yes.
that's, you know, and so we met, you know, together. I made sure they knew everything. I was like, you all can have all of the information you want. Nothing is off limits. And they also then attended circles with me or any difficult conversations if I felt like I needed it, which I usually did. And
Yeah.
they got to know each other. And they also, like, we had kind of a closing circle a few weeks ago. Not that we'll never talk to each other again, but I wanted to have a kind of a, we've done this work together. And now it's, you know, and so it
Yeah.
was very kind of like, everyone was a part. There was no hierarchy. They, you know, and so it
Yeah.
saved my life. I mean, truly saved my life. I,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what would have happened without it because they wanted to make sure that I survived, not just professionally or something like, because there, you know, were really difficult moments for me. And they were like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. You need to go lay down, or you need to have another before another circle or whatever. And they made sure that I was surviving as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really grateful for that pod. I'm really grateful you
Yeah.
survived this year. I think that you still have a lot more that you're going to give to the world. And even if you don't give another
Yeah.
thing, like, you deserve to exist. You're able to living and learning and healing. Um, and, you know, it does make me think, this is one of the things that I'm always interested in. It's like, there's some people in the world, you know, that we call out, we do direct actions, we do this stuff. And as far as we can see, there's no intention to be good in them. And so the shame thing doesn't really have that much impact. Being embarrassed doesn't even have that much impact. And then there are folks who are like, no, I really care. Like, what people think about me as someone who's trying to create good in the world, it really matters to me. And it can strip my identity so fully that it can put me on the verge of danger to myself. And I think naming that, because this is part of why I think this strategy of call outs is not actually the move that we want to make with each other laterally, or, you know, like when we're in the same movement spaces, or we're in a space where it's like, I can be in contact with you. And so, because the impact of public shame on people who actually care about being a part of community can be so detrimental, I think we should be so much more careful with it. I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you want to share about the process of the essay. You know, you said you were like, damn, this is good. Like, you know, do you feel like there's a future in which the work of the essay could continue with you? That there's something there, you know, like without the poem? Yeah. Does it feel like there's a process
I
for
mean,
this to move forward into,
I
or?
don't know. I don't know yet, you know? Mm.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, part of,
Yeah.
again, what makes it tricky is what I said at the beginning is like, because not everybody knows and there's like not a end point, like I have the conversation again every single time someone talks about it or I talk about it. It's like, you know, every time I interview for a job,
So
or
you,
if I'm going to work with another organization, or if someone, you know, wants to hire me to come speak, like, so if they don't know about it, now I have to confess it to them. Then they're like not sure how to move forward. That it's like such a thing that I don't like, and nobody knows what's the right thing to do. So like, I have elders and friends who are like, stop it. Stop doing that. You don't have to apologize to everyone on the planet that you ever did a thing. And then some that are like, no, you need to lead with it every
Yeah.
time. Everyone needs to understand. It needs to be in bold print across your forehead. Like, so I'm still navigating, and not only that, like my own body reaction to like having conversations about something I did wrong or bad is like a real thing.
Well, and it's so interesting because in most of the ways that we hold these processes, we're really looking for what is the thing that's going to make it right. That comes from the person who was harmed, right? That it's like the person who's harmed is like, here's the boundary I need. Here's the way I need you to talk about it moving forward. Here's, or the, I want you to never talk about it moving forward, or whatever else that comes from the survivor of harm. And in this case, you know, I think because you're kind of flying without that, and having to source from within, that's also part of why I was like, let's create a little thing, you know, let's make something here that you just be like, there, it's over there, go watch that, and then talk to me, because I was like really moved by the both by the like, oh, I know, you know, like I've fucked up, I've done stuff that's wrong before, and like some of it has been in public, or public in front of people I cared about. A lot of it hasn't been, and I know a lot of people like that who are just like, ooh, you know. um, so part of what I was interested in is like, I felt the good intention in you, I also felt the fuck up in you, you know, I also felt the desire to make it right in you, and I feel now the like question, like the unknown. And the unknown is the beginner's mind place, right? Where we can be like, okay, like what we know, this is what we know. And how we move forward from here is like, we need brave space. We still need brave space. And one of the things I've always thought is really interesting is that the original poem doesn't have the words brave space in it, like that framework, the idea is it's moving in that direction, but like the naming of it is something that you did and you added to it. And yeah, I think as you're living through it, living into brave space right now, the way will just emerge one step at a time, right? So it was like, we talked, it was like, well, it feels like a good next step is to enter brave space together publicly. And then we'll see from that space, like you know, like take a while and be like, how does this feel, you know, how do these conversations, because I also know a lot of other people who have been called out, gone through cancellation, and are struggling with the same things. And I mentioned this to you, but my practice with when people reach out to me like, this is going on, this is happening to me now. And I've actually had a lot of people since We Will Not Cancel Us came out. I've had a lot of people who were initially very skeptical or critical of the initial essay or of the text circle back to me and be like, it happened to me. Never happened. I didn't understand. Now that it's happened, I understand in a different way. And so I'm like, I think this is happening a lot. And I try to pair people up or connect people. You know, I'm like, you're an ED who got canceled. Here's another one. And I don't know what you'll figure out together, but I do think it's helpful to be in a conversation that's like, how often are we put in these structures that we're all navigating without a map? And then some people stumble into the quicksand, and some people, you know, find the lake, and some people figure something else out. But I think the one step at a time with any, you know, it's like a kind of a sobriety. I don't know if that feels like a case for you, because, and you can feel free not to answer this, but to your knowledge, is this the only time this has happened for you?
Yeah. About
a specific
that kind of thing. Like, and I've written one full book. I've been in several other books, journal stuff. Like, I know how to write, you know, never kind of issues with plagiarism in college or high school, anything. So it's not a pattern. And it's, you know, but it's like some of us are going to fuck up publicly, or it's just going to become known publicly, and some of us are not. I mean, I've had a lot of people, I don't know if it's a lot, I have had people reach out to me and be like, I've done similar things, or I can imagine that something I've done would, especially now, like you were saying with meme culture, like I've just had people be scared, either scared of this happening to them, whether it's about this or not, whether it's plagiarism or maybe I thing and I didn't like
Yes.
fully quote the source, or maybe it's something totally unrelated. But people, like, I mean,
That's right.
many of us, I think, are terrified that one day something, an argument with a partner that got out of hand, or, and you yelled at them and said they were, cussed them out of their name and whatever. And, whatever, like people are worried that it's going to come back
Yeah.
from the past
Well,
and they're going to get called out about it.
yeah.
And then their thing is whatever they have is going to be over. And, there
Yeah.
has to be some other way to deal with people, not people who don't give a shit, but people who really do, who really
Yeah.
want to like answer for whatever they've done without it meaning that everything you've
Yes.
done is now a pile of shit. And I felt really about that before this happened
Yeah.
to me, but I mean that's what this has now done, is like now I want to say that publicly. I was afraid to say that publicly before. I was afraid to say, "Hey, y'all, maybe we should do this another way." I remember feeling afraid for you when We Will
Yeah.
Not Cancel Us came out. Like afraid, like felt it in my body. And Bill was like,
Yeah.
maybe I should just still be quiet, and I'm not going to be quiet.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the move. I'll say over these past few years for me, I've been like, if we're trying to change these entire systems of harm and we stay quiet when our own people are being attacked without data, right? If we're like, oh, well, if I don't have the whole case, or if I don't fully agree with every single thing, or if I don't fully understand it all, I'm not going to say anything. Or even worse, if I have my own small critique of this person, which I've seen happen to a lot of our leaders, where people are like, whatever they're getting called out on is some whole other thing. Maybe it's true, not true, but I also don't agree with something about them. So I'm just going to stay over here in my lane. And I'm like, it's just so easy to rend a very important movement moment into these pieces that can't have any impact. And when We Will Not Cancel Us came out, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I felt like I had to write it. I felt like I was being pushed by ancestors and forces beyond me to do it. But I was like, this is not my brand. This is not, I don't even have a brand, but I'm like, this is not my way. Like, I'm like, let's all, figure it out getting along. And I was just like, no, I want to draw a line here that there's behavior that is not up to what we need the standard to be for movement if we're trying to actually create the level of change we need in the timeline that we want to create it. Because it's also, there's something like every time something gets powerful and starts to have impact, that's when, people can be like, oh, that person's bad. And I'm like, oh, fuck it. And it's like, hold on. Like that also, none of the work is ever held by just one person. Nothing is ever even ideated by just one person. Like, I'm like, I named emergent strategy, but tons of people were doing it, and tons of people will have, it's indigenous wisdom,
Yep,
which I also think Brave Space is indigenous wisdom.
that's
I
right.
think it goes back in all of us, right? This way of thinking, and there's a lineage. So it's like, what I see people reusing and remixing my words
Yeah.
all the time, and sometimes they're accurate and they just don't use my name, and sometimes they get it really off, and I'm grateful that they didn't use my name. I'm like, oh, that's not it. But whatever it is, it's like there's a whole journey of like, we're in this wider field together, and capitalism makes us feel like we have to own things in this very tight, credited way, but also capitalism has stolen credit from those who deserved it. It's a contradictory thing.
Yeah.
um, and maybe we're raising more questions than answers here, but to me it just felt important to name like
Yeah.
what it feels like to be in it, like what it feels like to be the questions and in a messy moment, and still be a human being that has made a good offer to the world and is trying to figure out how to move forward with that. uh, and you know I do think that this is part of the path, right? I do think like being able to see a human being and be like, it's not just like that plagiarist over there, you know, it's like, this is Micky ScottBey Jones. She had a whole story before this happened. She made this mistake. She is examining what led to that. And as soon as she was called in around it, she acknowledged it, and she's in the process of that now. Like, for the rest of your life, this is a part of your story. This is part of what you'll be working on. And we all have stories like this. It's so important to me. And I want to thank you for stepping up and being willing to be in the conversation. It feels like part of this accountability process. And it feels like, I hope that other people who have gone through the similar experience to you can see this and gain something from it, even if it's just like, oh shit, I didn't know I could do an accountability pod. I didn't understand that. Mia Mingus is someone who, like, I feel like I say her name a lot because she's given such very tangible tools. So there's a super tangible tool about the pods themselves. She also has a super tangible tool about how to give a good apology, right? Which I felt like when I read what you had posted, I was like, this feels like a really solid, thorough accounting for what happened without disappearing context, right? Without disappearing the fact that it's like, you know, like, I don't know this person. I don't know this process. I know that this person tells me that this is what happened, and I'm trying to honor that. And I know that this person didn't continue the process with me, and I don't know why, right? Anything could happen. Like, life is overwhelming for people, you know, because I know sort of like, if there's a chance that I can truly be accountable and there's a relationship here to be accountable for, I always try to opt into that. And then there's people where I'm like, you're not interested in accountability from me. You're interested in destroying me. You're interested in dismissing me, erasing me from my life. So I can't, that's not something I'll be able to engage in because my job is to be life moving towards life. And I that. Um, but I think that part with the internet gets very sticky, right? It's like this idea of being accountable to the whole world, like anyone who can see you and make a comment or say something about you, like, it's complex. And I just want to honor that. I feel like you took Bestrano at her word, and her community stood up and was like, yeah, you know, like, there's reason for her to be angry. There's a real thing going on here. And I want to, you know, like, extend good vibes, good energy towards her, that, like, you know, she has total permission to never engage in any of this. Like, that's the work that she gets to do, right? Or that's the choice that that's the choose to set. Anything that we're doing here, even in talking about it, that she's like, no, you know, we'll figure that out. Right? But it felt important of that say, yes, this exists, this is out, this resource is there. There's, you know, the plagiarism there, the accountability process has happened, and the work of Brave Space continues.
Yeah, sorry, my phone was dying. I had to plug it in.
Larger energy.
Yeah, I mean, Adrienne, there's so much that, like, I mean, it's almost like I want to like write about this, but that also feels weird to like do that. But like, just even the ways, like when you and I were in contact, you know, that you very clearly were like, this is what I have capacity for, and this is what I don't. You were like, I don't have capacity for talking in person right now, but we can keep going through email. You know, you signed one of your emails to me, like, holding your humanity. And I like that. I was in tears. It did me in. Like, that did so much for me. Like, that you weren't just like, you know, F you, you know, but you like were leading with my humanity, and just that you were very clear about what you had capacity for, and you still told me how you felt. You didn't try and clean it up. You know, and you were like, here are the practical elements, and I want to be updated on this, this, and this. Like, I mean, obviously you had already built up some skill. And that's the thing, is like, I feel like a lot of us want like pathways that allow for people to mess up, or that have messed up, to do what they can to make it right. Like, we've gotten it kind of on a big scale, right? Like, you murder somebody, you go to prison, we want a way for you to integrate back into society. But it's like, they also kind of paid a little price because they were in prison, and it's going to be hard for them, but we don't know what to do with people who are
Yeah.
like in our midst and do something that's kind of shitty, but like obviously isn't the end of the world. Like we haven't figured out how to like kind of bring it down. And those really practical ways
Yeah.
that you did that, I didn't feel in any way like you were just trying not to deal with it because you set boundaries, because you were clear about your capacity. I felt like honored in that. I felt like you were going to take care of you. That's brave
Yeah.
space. You were taking care of you, and you were letting me take care of me, and you weren't trying to take care of my stuff.
Yeah.
That's like, no matter how like sad I sounded or whatever, you're like, you take care of you, and I'll take care of me. And it's like, that's it. And I just like,
Yeah.
there is an underground, like one of the things I have discovered is there is an underground of people who have been canceled, of people who've been accused of things and felt like their community abandoned them or isolated them, and they are talking to each other. I was part of a Discord where it's like people
Yeah.
are telling their stories, are saying like, will you all just talk to me? Can I have some friends
Yeah.
to go through this with? Because varying degrees of isolation happen for people. And and I'm
Yeah.
talking about people on the left who are like, I don't know how to deal. And so it's like, what are we going to do so that people don't just become, like abandoned underground and don't know who to talk to? We got to find some way to include like
I mean,
the people who have been accused of doing something. And of course, not people who are dangerous. Like, that's not what I'm talking about.
but I that point even, Mickey, like I think this is the point to me is like when I say abolition, right?
Yeah.
I mean abolition, right? For the whole thing. I'm like this idea of prisons, of
Yes.
policing each other, and of punishment. It worked to actually stop harm. Like if it worked, we would not have harm because we have the most punishment of all people, all nations of all time. Like
Yeah.
we're the most punitive, and it doesn't work
Yeah.
except to break the spirits, right? So I feel like even in the most egregious cases, we have to figure it out. We have to figure out you you killed someone. Like, what is the journey by which we can figure out why that happened and how to never have it happen again to
Yeah.
recover your soul? And something much less egregious, but for someone it feels like, I mean, I remember I read that piece, the Vestrano posted.
Yeah.
She's like, I am so angry about this. I'm so hurt by this. And
Yeah.
it's like, holy shit. Okay. Like what I did, it really hurt you. And I have to make sure reclaim
Yeah.
the part of my soul that was able to hurt you and understand it. And she also has to find, or they, I don't know, but that person has to figure out what is my process of getting this right. And I think this is where our movement is struggling the most right now, both because we don't necessarily have 100% account,
Yeah.
100% like
Yeah.
commitment to abolition concept or even understanding about what we mean by it. I think people are like, some
Right.
abolition sounds good. What is that? Right. So I feel like there's things where we get the language ahead of the
That,
understanding and ahead of the practice. Then it's almost like we barrel through the language
that,
before we even get a chance to like land in it.
yeah.
How do I feel about, for me, it's taken a good like 12-year journey of like learning, unlearning, unlearning. Like I kept being like, yeah, I'm an abolitionist. And then Miriam Cobb would post something. I'd be like,
Right.
what? That's you? And then I would have to sit with that and be like, well, Miriam Cobb was always correct.
Right.
So I have to contend with that. Like, and does her research. I have to contend with like Mia Mingus. Like I have to contend with like all these people that I'm looking up to and learning from are pushing
Yeah.
that and saying no further. Like we meet everyone in all cases. There is another way, and it's not going to be a top-down state system. And so then for us in the left, it's like, okay, then in a moment like this,
Yeah.
this is actually our chance to practice. And it seems small for some people. And when you reached out to me, it was like, I could turn the other way. I could be
Yeah.
really upset with you. Like I was upset, like They're like,
Right.
Micky, like, why, why'd you sign a contract with me like this, girl? And, then I was like,
Mhm.
you know what? This isn't even about me. This is about me. This isn't a personal thing. This is your work. This is something that you've got to figure out and work on. And it's something we
That's
don't
right.
structurally have figured out. And I can drop the personal out of it. I can see your humanity. And I'm like, you're going to learn from this practice. And whatever you learn, it's going to be of
Yeah.
use to the collective if you let it be. And
Yeah.
it's happening right now. Um, and I'm really
Yeah. Me too.
grateful for this. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here with you now. And I'm sorry, I just saw something went
Oh,
by that said my audio was choppy. Sorry about that.
it
It's
is.
I don't know if it's better now, but I had okay, good. um,
Yeah.
so hopefully stuff was clear enough. And um, yeah, I don't know that there's more that we need to
Yeah.
say at this point. Do you feel
I mean, I will
complete? Do you feel
say there's just one
satisfied?
other thing that's kind of
And
inside me about like perfectionism. I think before this whole thing has
mm,
also completely rearranged my relationship with perfectionism. I think before I spent a lot of energy trying to show up perfect to and we
mm-hmm.
do that in a lot of ways in movement, right? Is like we have to have read the books, we have to have known
You
all
ever?
the concepts, like already day one. Like if you have not read every Angela Davis book, get out. Like, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
everything, you know,
My thing is like if you say what
you got to go.
hegemony is, you
And I tried to be really perfect, right? Like never, which actually just leads us to a lot of behavior of hiding and like, gonna make just making sure that you never get caught doing anything that could lead you to getting put out of the village, right? And so I'm not interested in that anymore. Put like I've already been put out of the village and
yeah,
lived. So like there's not a whole lot you could do to me. People are either going to like me or they're not. People are either going to think I'm sincere or they don't. Like there's literally nothing I can do about it. So I want to
yeah,
welcome other, like that's I think what I was trying to get to. And I also didn't realize like the somatic pieces, and because like it wasn't until we were probably 45 minutes into this conversation that my body calmed down. Like I checked my heart rate before we
yeah,
got on and it had already gone up from 97 to 122 or something. Like my heart rate was like, ah, you're walking in to a lion's den. Like it was freaking out. And I was working with myself. And I have so many things now that I can do to like ask myself, am I safe? Okay, you're safe in your body. We're okay right now. You're in your house. No one can come get you and, string you up on a pole for plagiarizing. Like, I have to do that work inside myself now. And I
yeah,
thought I understood that before. I thought I was working with the ways I try to be perfect and try even at the beginning of all this, like literally looking up Mia Mingus 4 parts of an apology. Okay, how do I perfectly apologize? And everybody will know that I'm like, I mean this and I'm a good person. And how do I have the most perfect pod ever? Like trying so hard. And now I'm like, I'm not going to be perfect. And that's not how we do this together. And let's try a lot of shit and fuck it up so we can figure it out. That's what I'm in for now. And
yeah,
so, you
yeah.
know,
I very much. I mean, this is actually the only way I'm able to publish anything ever, right? Is that I'm like, there's a very good chance that something in this book is totally wrong or gonna somebody or I'm doing my very, very, very best to up like here's what I know right now. Here's everything I can tell you right now. And I'm offering it with the maximum love that I can offer it. And like, you know, um, there's a poem that I wrote that like tons of people love, and then someone came in, they were like, it's ableist. And I was like,
mm,
oh my, like now I didn't see that when I wrote it, but it says like we're all walking in this way or whatever. And it's like, ah, it's so important to me to be like, I understand what I meant when I wrote it. And in the context, I was still
yeah,
someone who was walking easily and my able act. Now I'm
yeah,
like, y'all gonna wheelchair me to the revolution. And
Yeah.
now it occurred to me, right? But I think also that hindsight piece, it's like we can go back and try to understand, but it's also just being with. And I think you're doing an incredible job of this, of just being like, I can't lie and pretend I figured it all
Mm.
out. I just know that it did happen. It did, and I am accountable for it. And Micky, I'm so grateful that you are doing what you're doing and that you're willing to share it. And I see the fearlessness in you. I think it'll help find our way through this. And this is how we hold
Thank you.
change.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all, everyone who tuned in. Um, you know, if you found this useful, if you know someone who could really benefit from this, please pass it on to them. I'm going to repost it on my page, and I think now I
Yeah.
can invite you to collaborate,
Okay.
so it can post on your page. I'm, Auntie is learning new tricks,
Well,
but um, I'm going to it up.
okay.
It'll be a part of the Holding Change series here, and then we also have exported all of them to YouTube, and so we'll do the same thing that way. So if someone's not on Instagram or social media or whatever, you can still share it with them there.
And I
And
do want to
let's keep
support people
learning.
through this too. So I know you said you've been matching people and supporting people. You know, if they're like people need help starting pods or like anything I can share and ways I can support people, especially folks who are wanting to take accountability or, get through some conflicts in a good way. I want to support people, and I don't
Yeah.
even know what that looks like, but I am available. So I want people to know that too.
Form follows function, right? If you want to
Yeah.
serve that function, the form will come. You'll figure it
I appreciate you
out.
too.
I
Thank
appreciate
you
you.
so much. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to go hug my
Bye.
turtle.